Hello there, good afternoon, welcome to Rob's Models. I'm Rob and thanks for dropping in today. The 1:48 scale de Havilland Chipmunk T.10, the first aircraft type designed and built by de Havilland Canada. The length of it is going to be 164mm, which is going to be about 6.5 inches. Width is actually wider, is 218, so you're looking there probably about just 8-9 inches wide and 84 pieces to it. Got the little description of the four different markings we've got there. So we've got the camouflage marking, so we've got the colours of the No. 2 Flying Training School in Saffron Walden, Essex in 2020. You've got one which was basically the first British chipmunk displayed at Farnborough in 1949. Then you've got the Royal Navy Historic Flight, Yeovilton, Somerset, and that's the 2009, and a chipmunk from the Army Air Corps, and that's the one in the camouflage one, in Middlewallop, Hampshire, England, where it's 1 flying hours, gives you the list of all things, and it's a skill level 2. So we have got a bag of bits, and in actual fact this one, unlike the Vulcan and a few of the other Airfix ones recently where they've been going into individual bags, this looks like they've bagged up the whole lot in one, whereas it have been different sprues. And we've got instructions and decals. We've got the little bit of blurb on there, which is basically the same as it was on the box, and gives a little bit more information. So the maximum speed 138 miles per hour, range 259 miles, wingspans 34 foot, and length it's 25.5 foot. First off, just going to be building up the cockpit, sort of the seat, with a very basic seats if I recall. Building up the very simple basic cockpit tub, so it really is just a simple cushion going into a sort of a steel tub there. Got to do a little bit of drilling by the look of it, just to open up a few little holes there. And as that comes together, it's not a huge amount. It is quite, if I recall, it is quite a sparse interior. And as with the new sort of Airfix design, with these, the sub builds from what you've done in previous parts are in red. So cockpit hub comes together. Looks like we got the. It looks like we should have quite a bit of detail actually moulded onto the sides. Control sort of surfaces going in there. Two halves coming, blanking plate at the back. Then we've got a bulkhead at the front, putting on the oil tank. Would that be a fuel tank? Probably an oil tank. That's going to come in. Decals for the instrument panels. So at least you've got an instrument panel on this one. So no engine in there, but just the front of the engine. Oh no, hang on. No, of course it is. Here's the engine. Okay, so we do actually have an engine to this. The little axle for it isn't getting glued in, so that should rotate. You've got the exhaust manifolds. So actually, that's looking quite a nice detailed engine. It looks like you've got fins round the pistons, you know, sort of for the air cooling, and struts. So actually, that looks like that's going to be quite nice. Quite a nice bit of detail on there. Looks like the main bottom of the wing is just one big long bit, so that's going to make sure that it keeps that dihedral shape without sagging. That's just going to clip on there, and then the top surfaces are going to go on there. And we've got the ailerons on there. I was going to say those are going to be posable, but they're not looking like they actually just slot in. So they looks just slots, but I'm sure what you can do is, before slotting them in, slightly bend the little tab so they go in at an angle. That's what I've done on a few models before. And here we go for the tail plane. They just come together. Actually, we've got two different variants. Actually, got two different rudders, a few little stabilisers, and again, it's looking like the ailerons at the back, they slot in. I'm not too sure whether they're going to be tabs, so they might be posable as well. Landing gear, the landing gear are always down, and this doesn't have retractable landing gear, so you don't have the option for that one. Two different types by the look of it. If you're doing it where it's parked up, you're going to use those landing gear where it looks like the actual suspension's being compressed, and if it's going to be an in-flight, you'd be using that landing gear, where that's going to be slightly extended. Push rod's going to be slightly extended out, so that's going to show it taking weight. Then of course we've got the rear landing gear. We will have to check the wheels. I think they're looking round. Sometimes Airfix do weighted effect wheels. Those look perfectly round. I would have thought there'd have been, if there's an option for an up and a down, whether it's taking weight, whether you'd have tyres that show it's taking weight, which is a little bit odd. If it's not, just showing you how to fit the rear wheel. Then a few little actuators on there, airspeed reader, pitot tubes, little aerial that comes down, a little aerial here and there. Note, when building this model, the engine side cover is open, assemble parts below, and refer step 16, 17. So, I'm sure many people will be building it with the engine covers up. What's nice actually is that it looks like you can detail the engine up and have the engine covers. It doesn't. It's a pity that you couldn't change them. Like the Tamiya 109 that I did recently had the magnet, so you could actually open and close the cowlings to display how you wanted to display. So all canopy framing is black inside, so actually that's the first time I've seen that on an Airfix kit, but just confirms it's a black interior. There we go, do not glue. What was that? Oh, there's a jig. Okay, so we've got a little jig just to assemble some of the parts there. So you're going to be building up the canopy in parts. Actually, it's not just a one-piece canopy, or at least you've got the side parts and just got a few little handles and things there. So actually, that is looking like that's quite detailed. So that's basically the Havilland. That's the dry flying school, which is in 2020. So that's probably going to be the colours that most people are going to go for, because people who buy the Chipmunk are probably remembering what the Chipmunk was, and therefore they're probably going to be reminiscing about it, and you know, that's why they're buying it. Gives you the colour codes for it in Humbrol, obviously. There we go. So that's going to be the bare metal finish one, but that's basically going to be the one that flew at Farnborough in 1949. And finally, this one is going to be quite an interesting one. I mean, I am tempted to do a few versions of this because the kit isn't massively expensive. Decals are looking pretty good. I must say, the Airfix decals recently I have been finding quite enjoyable actually. They do go down really well. The registration on them is all good. Looking quite clear, good roundels. Haven't got any bleeding through onto the whites or anything like that. And a good selection. And I've got to say, they do, if they're like the ones that they've done on previous recent ones, they'll bed down quite nicely. I found that they go on really well. What we're really here for though is the plastic, and it is a bit disappointing that they've stuck them all in a plastic bag, although it shouldn't really make too much difference with this one. So first off, actually we got the clear parts. So mainly it is spread over, including the clear one, 4 sprues. 3 if you're not including the one. And actually straight away I'm seeing that there's actually some very nice sort of detail on there, and a nice sort of ribbing, stretched fabric effect on there. Gives you a little bit of an idea. You can see there is a bit of a raised detail going on there, and actually some fine detail. Now it is quite odd that those flaps, they've got some very, very big sort of panel lines going on there, and why they didn't do them separate is beyond me. However, there is some good texture to that. I don't know how well that's showing up. If I try and get it so there's a bit of a shadow looking down it, no, that's not going to work. But it's definitely, you can see the spars on there, and the stretched panel. That is actually that's really nice actually. The rivets that you got on there, raised rivets, but they are very fine and some good texture to them. And also got some good sort of quite fine panel lines on there. Let's go on to next one. So we'll go on to this sprue next. So this is the main fuselage parts. We've got a few other little bits of detail on there. I've got to say the pilots on there, they're both exactly the same. It is quite softly moulded, I've got to say, those pilots. I mean, they should be fine, but it's just not quite crisp detail. I mean, actually, they should be fine once you give a bit of a paint, put a wash on there. But let's look at those fuselage halves on this side first of all. Again, some fine riveting detail, and also not the finest, but quite fine panel lines. It should take a wash quite nicely. I mean, these things being trainers weren't getting really dirty. That's one thing to bear in mind. Have to make sure that when you build it, that you sort of keep it clean. Yeah, they're not going to be getting, you know, covered in mud and everything on a regular basis. Flipping over, I was just going to look at the internal parts. We'll zoom in a little bit more in a moment. However, what is quite odd is the pilots have still got actually full detail and straps of their parachutes and all of that, and you can see that they are actually sat on the parachutes as you had to waddle with the parachute strapped to your ass. Inside, some of these bits, to be honest, they are quite detailed. However, some of those controls could have actually easily been separate parts. So not too sure. I think Airfix have done this in a way to keep it kind of simple as well, maybe almost like an introduction to 48 scale. A bit of, you know, careful painting, a little bit of dry brushing, that should work quite well there. Let's come over to here. Now the engine, this, I've got to say, the engine, I was going to say, doesn't look quite as good as what it does in the instructions. You do still have some of the fins around there, but the cooling fins on the engine, so there is texture to it, but I'm sure with a wash, a pin wash, we'll just get in there and make those fins a little bit more visible. And like the bulkhead where the engine's going to fit on, we have got some quite nice detail on there as well. So again, it's not going to be dirty, but it's not going to be completely clean. It's you know, a 1948 designed engine. It's going to be chucking a little bit of oil around there, so it will give a chance to weather it up. So you've got dual instrument panel in there. It was pretty Spartan in these things. Landing gear, as we say, we've got two sets of struts, one for extended position and one for sort of on the ground. But what is quite odd is you've got two sets of struts, however non-weighted wheels. So even if you have it on the ground position where gravity's lowering that suspension, you're still going to have perfectly round wheels, which is odd because Airfix have started to do weighted wheels in some of their kits, which is odd as well because they are keyed as well. The wheels have actually got a little key in them to make sure that they go the right way up, but they're perfectly round, so that makes no difference. Obviously no flash on there on any of these parts, no ejection sort of mouldings. And let's come to the clear parts, but they are very clear and very shiny. So again, good clear parts. So that's the rear side. So it's not really, you can see the grid, if we look at that bit there, as I rotate it around, you can see that the straight lines through are still remaining quite straight. Obviously where that bulge is there is some distortion, but where that bit's flat, yeah, that's keeping it flat. So that is some nice big front part to it there. So you're going to have a really good view in. So we have got some distortion going on there actually, but again it's a weird compound curved surface going on. Going to give good visibility into the cockpit. So that's my little unboxing and review of Airfix's Chipmunk. The Havilland Chipmunk T.10 is a lovely little trainer. It's a nice little kit. It's not going to be a massive kit, but for I guess an introduction into 48 scale, I think that's actually quite a good one. Detail does look good on it, quality looks good. There's some things where you think actually perhaps they could have maybe done a few separate parts, especially those interior sidewalls in the cockpit. However, I think the detail is there. That engine, I wasn't expecting it to be so much of a detailed engine and have the possibility to open the cowlings to show it off. I think the detail on there is in scale. It's a good ribbing effect as well. So yeah, that's going to be my review. I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm hoping to get round to build it, as I always try to do when I review something. I do actually want to build it and then come back to it later and actually see how it goes together, because I think that's how you really find out how a kit goes. So I've been Rob. Hope you have enjoyed that. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. It is appreciated. Catch you later. Happy modelling. Hope you've enjoyed it.